Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed, Tom Adams.
It's lovely to be with you all this morning. Thanks for having me. I'm going to argue this morning that there has never been a better time to rethink marketing to create responsible growth, not as a trade off, but as a strategy for differentiation and success. Organizations, don't they, have the potential to be closer than ever to the people that matter. The accelerated growth of digital engagement, constant innovation in marketing technology, and new sources of real time data and insight have created opportunities to connect with consumers, clients, patients, citizens, or students. And it's easier to reach new individuals and it's easier to personalize their experiences, which means we can be more relevant to them and respond to their needs more readily. However, the much discussed imminent demise of third-party cookies could change all this, particularly disrupting how marketers target new customers, but also affecting understanding of a consumer's end-to-end journey. So paradoxically, perhaps, I think this offers a genuine opportunity for marketing to rethink its role and approach. And in particular, is a chance to make better use of the data you already own to create more relevant and differentiated experiences, communications, and services, really to keep and attract the right customers. Most importantly, now is the time to genuinely rethink the value exchange with those customers and for marketing to position itself, I guess, beyond communications and brand management to lead the way towards a more responsible approach to growth. Now, marketing has clearly always had a critical role to play in growth and value creation, but shifts in consumer behavior and expectations are now influencing not just what marketing does to grow your business, but how it does it to grow responsibly. And arguably, being responsible is increasingly a differentiator as drivers of choice shift and switching from one brand to another is easier than ever. Now, for example, the rise of ethical consumerism has driven the development of ethical products and brands where purpose, values, and consideration for the environment and broader societal needs are increasingly prioritized. This growth of what you might call responsible brands that align with consumer values is likely to become even more mainstream, according to our recent Global Consumer Insights survey, which shows the rise of what we call the conscientious consumer, a group of shoppers created during the pandemic who have changed their behavior due to heightened health and safety concerns. Now, these findings are supported by another recent PwC Research Quantibus survey of 1,000 UK shoppers, where 86% of them said it's quite or very important to purchase from a retailer with a strong company values and who's committed to doing the right thing. And 75% of those shoppers see a company's values as quite important or very important in influencing any decision to share additional personal data, for example. And this new group is willing to pay more for healthier, local, and environmentally friendly options. And the trend they represent emerged before the pandemic and is likely to persist beyond it. So, appealing to this need is obviously about more than doing things right to meet basic standards of responsibility. It requires more than a positioning statement, GDPR compliance, or committing to supporting vulnerable or protected customers. And of course, these principles are absolutely vital, but they're increasingly a minimum requirement for brand credibility. And this is because customers don't have to choose any longer between convenience or quality, ethics and price. So responsibility is now part of the value exchange between brand and customer, particularly when it comes to the use of data and personalization, for example. And this is arguably just as true in B2B relationships, where the ESG agenda is a critical decision lens across the value chain, from marketing to sales, manufacturing, and procurement. So, how does marketing respond to these new choice drivers? Well, it's not news, of course, that digital marketing has given us extraordinary access and insight into customers, helping organizations to understand and target individuals and reach them with the right message at the right time and place in a way that's never been possible before. Now, coupled with automation, it's possible to create hyper-targeted communications and journeys in ways that has opened up the potential of marketing to organizations of all shapes, sizes, and budgets, which is often a good thing, but can lead to gaps in our understanding of who we're talking to and what we're saying and when. So the question, I suppose, is just because we can, does it mean we should? So marketing for responsible growth is about turning some of these new conventions on their head and using data, I guess, to help the customer. Where once an organization learned about its customer for its own benefit, it now needs to learn about that customer to create an offering that improves their experience. I think this means looking to differentiate and drive loyalty by involving the customer in how they're targeted and engaged, helping them understand behavior and buying patterns, steering them towards products, services, and solutions that work for them, and maybe away from those that don't. Now, doing this responsibly also means putting data privacy and ethics at the top of the agenda, going beyond legal obligations to strategically put the customer first. And I guess taking a values-driven approach to everything from data monetization to data sharing and artificial intelligence simultaneously builds that brand trust, loyalty, and insight. But as this quote from a survey by the World Federation of Advertisers in August 2020 shows, 79% of respondents said first-party data was now business critical, but only 28% said it was being well used, which means there's still a long way to go on the path to using data at this level. Once you can, though, the potential benefits are powerful. So, for example, in categories like retail, marketing has historically been geared around using customer data to understand buying behaviors to improve performance. So, mining transactional, footfall, and customer engagement data to inform things like product promotion, pricing, merchandising that helps to meet sales targets and puts the right product in the right place for the customer when they need it. And while a degree of personalization may provide more relevance and underpin things like loyalty and reward strategies, the analysis in the background isn't necessarily always explicit in the customer relationship. So marketing for responsible growth is about turning that on its head and using data in the customer's best interests. And while it still must include more ethical, transparent, and thoughtful targeting, as well as the appropriate use of data, to be truly distinctive means much more than that. So I think brands should look to stand out by involving the customer in how they're targeted and engaged, helping them to understand consumption patterns, steering them towards products that are better for them and away from those that are not, as I've said. So, for example, that PwC research Quantibus survey confirms that 76% of consumers want to buy from retailers, for example, who actively help them to make better or healthier lifestyle choices. So this change in approach must be an explicit part of the relationship and brand. And it's an approach we've seen some telco brands successfully employ, recommending customers change tariffs if they're paying for more than they need. Elsewhere, universities and colleges are increasingly iterating online offerings based on student feedback and data, and contrasting these approaches against surge pricing models for private transport hire, for example, shows how individuals expect to benefit from the insight their data provides. Now, this will arguably go further as people continue, for example, to work from home and digital shopping habits persist, which is an opportunity for consumer and retail brands in essence, to use customer and transaction data and insight to build more intelligent conversations and recommendations, driving healthier, more affordable, more sustainable, or better suited products and services to reduce waste, inconvenience, increase service quality, personalization, and genuinely differentiate from the competition. Now, much of this, I suppose, demonstrates the responsible side of marketing, but does it drive measurable growth? Now, I think it does when you consider the impact that this degree of customer focus and understanding has on delivering exceptional experiences. Now, it's worth stressing that experience matters more than ever before. Consumers tell us it's as important as the products and services that they consume, and they'll pay more for a good one. Now, we think it's going to be critical to growth now and over the next decade. And this is even more likely to be driven by digital channels, of course, a trend that's accelerated in the post-COVID world. Our Golden Quarter research with UK consumers at the end of 2020 showed that 70% were planning, for example, to do their Christmas shopping online, which was up 10% on the previous year, including, say, with older age groups. But if experience matters, and digital matters more than ever, it's vital to know what makes a great experience. And our research shows it's based on 4 dimensions. So it does have to be, firstly, coherent, which means connected, easy, and seamless, working hard behind the scenes so that customers don't need to. And personal, making us feel valued, listened to, and included, and having an ability to anticipate needs and provide a tailored service to suit. But it also has to be engaging, which means connecting with the senses and creating emotions, evoking feelings of excitement, delight, and surprise, and more. And finally, it needs to be distinctive, which means standing out as memorable, authentic, and increasingly sustainable. Now, when brands deliver on those dimensions, what we found is that they create revenue, retention, and reputation growth with consumers, indicating that they're, in essence, more likely to choose, use, and recommend as a result of an exceptional experience. Now, conversely, um, brands which don't deliver fail across all of these dimensions. So, yes, they're seen as sort of tiring, hard to use, and unhelpful, but they're also felt to be annoying, frustrating, and dated. And this applies just as readily to travel as it does, say, to banking. But coherence, being easy, is the foundation of a great experience. And brands which consumers tell us get things right, get this right first and foremost. And they can name the elements of an experience that demonstrate it, which is, I think, really quite important, making that connection between their experience in action and how far that meets their needs. So, who gets the credit for being coherent? It might come as little surprise, perhaps, that some of our consumer research calls out Amazon, for example, as a benchmark. Now, it's seen in their eyes as being effortless, effective, and connected. And this is specifically because of features and services, for example, like Prime, one-click ordering, the ability to save bank account and address details to make ordering easy, automated updates on deliveries, keeping customers informed without them having to chase or track, and things like easy to process refunds without the need to speak with staff. And actually, importantly, a consistent experience across devices. So that coherence is a central factor in what drives experience, which in its own right is a factor in driving growth. When it comes to personal, Netflix is called out as a benchmark because it's anticipatory through its continually refreshed content. It's tailored through features like personalized homepages, and it's rewarding and inclusive, not least because of simple features like Netflix Children, for example, which provides family content and creates a safe environment for young viewers against different accounts. And John Lewis, for example, was given credit for striking the right emotional and sensory notes that drive an engaging experience, from a perception of clean, large, open spaces to the personal touch brought by partners in physical stores, for example. So each dimension relates to attributes that customers notice in the experience and remember when they think of a brand and how favorable they are towards it. But importantly, can't treat those dimensions as discrete elements. All 4 need to be considered collectively, but actually in a different balance based on the level of emotional involvement and how positive a situation is on what we think of as 4 key or vital journeys. And those journeys really, in the end, relate to something that's a special occasion, something that's really about the day-to-day, an inconvenience, and then, importantly, a crisis situation. So a more positive, kind of high emotional involvement journey is special. So it could be anything from buying a wedding dress, watching a blockbuster movie, which is where it's important to dial up the personal and engaging side of the experience to anticipate, personalize, and connect emotionally. Now, day-to-day journeys are all about getting things done. And that's about sort of, making sure that things work and are there when you need them. But this is where to focus, of course, on coherence, making things effortless, connected, and effective, to sort of have that Amazon effect, if you like. Now, above all, great experiences can turn an inconvenience into something easy and desirable, helping someone return an unwanted item easily, for example. And actually, there's an opportunity, of course, when you think about experience, to move customers on those journeys from, for example, crisis to special, or from inconvenience to day to day. And it's actually that real-time ability to decide the next best action and to help move the client or the customer's emotional state from one to the other that is a critical factor in driving that kind of engagement. But of course, that depends, doesn't it, on understanding our customer, what motivates and drives them, and where they are in that moment in the channel they're using. Now, get the balance right across these things, and we know from our research that revenue retention and reputation growth can follow, but it needs to be customer-centered and focus as much on the intangible emotional needs of customers as the practical side of timely, accurate, and well-targeted communications. So, if responsible growth is feasible and desirable, how viable is it for marketing to become a responsible growth function if we think about the link between those dimensions and those outcomes we've talked about? And I think to be recognized as a growth function, marketing must use the right technology to highlight activity that builds, retains, and engages across the whole customer journey. And it can do this by expanding its role, integrating the right technologies, and underpinning the entire process through the right use of data and analytics. However, while the ambition of modern marketers is focused on the customer, of course, and delivering enjoyable and meaningful experiences that we know help to drive growth across those different journeys, the reality of marketing technology and data to deliver against the ambition is disjointed and complicates the ability to meet those business goals and customer expectations. So something like 78% of marketers describe their customer engagement as data-driven, but only 28% of platforms, for example, are being properly integrated. So there's really an apparent gap between ambition and the reality of integrated technology in large companies. Of course, marketers are looking to deliver meaningful and enjoyable experiences, but executing effective marketing technology is easier said than done, and is further complicated by the backdrop of GDPR, data security, and that demise of third-party cookies we touched on. But in spite of these challenges, we still need to come up with a solution for doing scalable one-to-one marketing and experience orchestration. What we've seen in response to the need for marketers and the challenges they faced has been a sort of proliferation, hasn't there, of technology solutions covering an array of marketing functions, channels, and pain points based on individual needs, rather than sort of a comprehensive customer experience. And there's a real fragmentation in the tools and technologies available to help solve that challenge. So there's no single panacea, but we've sort of focused our efforts on making sense of this complexity with the principle of the 3 Ds of data, decision, and delivery. So first, we've got data, unifying customer data and building an actual 360-degree view of your customer. Then decisions based on that, having a centralized and sort of integrated orchestration layer connected to your customer data. So how can you make, in essence, decisions based on the data you've got and the insight that emerges from it? And then lastly, delivery, making up the sort of, I suppose, the experience layer, the headless content experience layers integrated with orchestration for delivering content to your channels. And it's the sort of intersection between those 3 things and technology as a sort of enabler of that connection, coupled with obviously the right kind of organizational structure, skills, and approach in the marketing function to make the most of that and execute it in action. Now, when done correctly, the organization will have all the components for automating the sort of high-touch intelligent interactions with customers, which of course allows teams to spend more time on better understanding customers' wants and needs so that brands can deliver richer, more experiential moments. So, just to recap, I think there's never been a better time to rethink marketing to create responsible growth. Not perhaps as a trade-off, but as a strategy for measurable success. Digital has opened up so much potential to reach and engage audiences, but the growing need for transparency and increasingly well-informed and conscientious global customer is asking for a new value exchange, one that explicitly makes use of their data for the customer's benefit as part of more accurate targeting, better personalization, products, services, and experiences that genuinely reflect their wants and needs, which in turn, I think will create the preference and loyalty that drives growth, but in a responsible way. Arguably, brands that do this today will be the brands that lead tomorrow. So it's been a great pleasure to share my thoughts with you this morning. Thanks again for listening in.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Take care. Have a great rest of the day.
A great pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all very much.